Members, we are prepared to take up file item number 54, AB 973, by Assemblywoman Strickland. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 973 by Assemblymember Strickland, an act relating to minors.
Ms. Strickland, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Current law requires that an infant who's been set to be adopted upon birth, who has been exposed to illegal drugs, that child's required to be taken by Child Protective Services and placed into foster care. This bill would allow a baby to go home with the predetermined adoptive parents and avoid having to be placed in the foster system once the appropriate paperwork has been completed by the Department of Social Services. This bill has had bipartisan support the whole way through the committee process. There have been no votes. It has been endorsed. The bill is supported by the Academy of California Adoption Lawyers, the California Adoption Agency Association, County Welfare Directors Association, the State Bar, and Family Connection Christian Adoption. I would ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Ms. Strickland moves the call. Mr. Tirico, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, if we could return to motions and resolutions, please.
Without objection.
There is a committee report at the desk relative to AB 347 by Speaker Bass. I ask that the committee report be deemed read and deemed adopted.
The clerk will read the report.
Madam Speaker, your Committee on Revenue and Taxation reports AB 347 with recommendation to consent calendar. Charles Calderon, Chair.
Without objection, the report is deemed adopted.
Mr. Speaker, on the same bill, AB 347 by Speaker Bass, I request unanimous consent to allow Mr. Block to take up the bill without reference to file for the purpose of third reading as amended in mock-up form immediately.
Without objection, the request is granted. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 347 by Assemblymember Bass, an act relating to taxation to take effect immediately. Tax levy.
Mr. Bass, you may open.
Mr. Block.
Mr. Block, you may open. For Ms. Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. The catastrophic earthquake on January 12, 2010 that brought Haiti to its knees left the world looking on in horror as news spread of the overwhelming destruction, devastation, and astonishing loss of life. Californians, like others across the globe, answered the call for help by supplying skilled technicians, physicians, and first responders to aid in search and rescue efforts. Additionally, residents reached deep into their pockets to provide much-needed cash to help in the recovery process. AB 347 will, in a small way, help those who have made charitable contributions by allowing individual and/or corporate taxpayers who make cash contributions to charitable organizations for earthquake relief efforts in Haiti from January 11th until March 1st to take a tax deduction in the 2009 tax year. During the recent Hope for Haiti Now telethon, more than $57 million was raised. In the first 24 hours after the initial quake, the American Red Cross raised more than $7 million in donations from text messages alone. Last Friday, January 22nd, President Obama signed into law H.R. 4462, a bipartisan measure which allows charitable contributions made to earthquake relief efforts to be deducted from federal taxes in 2009. AB 347 is patterned after that measure. It is my hope that AB 347 will give at least some small amount of relief to those who have helped others. I'm honored to be a principal co-author, and I thank you for your consideration of the bill. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing Mr. Arambula, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this measure and also rise to mention that our family is making a contribution to the Haiti relief in a rather unique way. My oldest son flew out this morning out of Fresno. He's an emergency room physician. He'll be there for the next week helping the quake victims. So I urge all of us to look for ways to make a contribution.
Mr. Block, you may close.
Thank you. I urge an aye vote on this very important matter.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 0. The measure passes.
Mr.
Block,
I request immediate transmittal to the Senate.
without objection. Without objection, we will return to file item 6, AB 680 by Assemblymember Hall. Mr. Liu will present. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 680 by Assemblymember Hall, an act relating to process fees.
Mr. Liu, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill is back on concurrence. The Senate amendments were technical in nature. This measure would revise civil fee charges for services provided by a county sheriff's department. The bill is supported by various law enforcement organizations and has received bipartisan support in both the Assembly and the Senate. We respectfully request your concurrence on this bill.
Seeing no further members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Liu moves the call. Okay, we will be moving to file item 2 on the second reading file. Without reference to the file, we'll be taking up AB 743 by Assemblymember Portantino. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 743 by Assemblymember Portantino, an act relating to foster care.
Mr. Portantino, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 743 is a bill that will make a tremendous difference in the lives of our state's most vulnerable youth, our foster children. This important measure will allow children's attorneys to be notified when their young clients are potentially going to be moved to a new placement before the actual move. This will enable the attorney, as the advocate for the child charged solely with protecting and furthering the child's best interest, to engage in the process early so that placement disruptions can be avoided when possible. Not only will this save the state money in the long run, as placement changes are expensive when you consider social worker time, school enrollment, sibling visitation, and more, but it will save children the trauma of being moved between placements, and perhaps most importantly, will keep some siblings together who may otherwise be separated. This bill is sponsored by the Children's Law Center of Los Angeles and supported by the California Welfare Directors Association. It passed both policy committees and Appropriations Committee with no votes, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 52, none zero. The measure passes. Members, we are preparing to lift the call on the 18 items that are currently on call. Members not in the chamber, please return to the chamber. We will be lifting the call in 5 minutes. Members, we are returning to file item 1. We will be taking up AB 151 without reference to the file. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 151 by Assemblymember Jones, an act relating to the Department of General Services.
Ms. Huber, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm presenting this bill on behalf of Assemblymember Jones and his joint author, Senator George Runner. AB 151 is about the Board of Equalization building. I think this is a support bill. The Board of Equalization, which brings in 1/3 of the state's revenues in a building that's too small, has major health and safety problems, and they're spending more than $68 million to try to fix this building. And this bill helps to leverage the BOE, DGS, and the Department of Finance to do something about this building. Right now, they're going out to bid with an independent third party to look at the condition of the building, what it would cost to sell it, what it would cost to fix it, does it fit the BOE's personnel needs, and what would it cost to move the BOE to lease space and leave the 450 N Street vacant while it's being fixed. And the independent study is due June 15th of this year, but it's important to keep this bill moving on a bipartisan basis, to keep the heat on DGS, Finance, and the BOE to find a solution. The bill is supported by Caltax and SEIU Local 1000, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 59, noes 0. The measure passes. File item 35, AB 1375. Ms. Galgiani, are you prepared to proceed? Pass temporarily? File item 60, AB 1538. Ms. Ma, are you prepared to proceed? Pass temporarily. Okay, members, we're proceeding to file item 55, AB 977, by Assemblywoman Skinner. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 977 by Assemblymember Skinner, an act relating to pharmacy.
You may open, Ms. Skinner.
Mr. Speaker, members. AB 977 addresses, well, let me begin by saying that right now we have a protocol that allows pharmacies to administer certain vaccines with a physician involved in the protocol. What 977 does is leave that protocol intact and narrows for influenza and influenza only that pharmacies that a new protocol could be developed by the medical board in consultation with the pharmacy board to allow for the administration of influenza and influenza only for people age 18 and older in a pilot project for just 4 years. So any other vaccination would still fall under the existing protocol, and all other pharmacies would fall under the existing protocol. And the bill was approved unanimously, or not unanimously, excuse me, it was approved in the Health Committee. It was also approved in the B&P Committee, and B&P asked for an amendment which clarified that the protocol had to be developed lead by the California Medical Board and only in consultation with the Pharmacy Board. The Pharmacy Board would not be co-equal and would not be lead. And again, the bill is narrowed solely and only to influenza vaccine and for people 18 and over. So I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
On question and debate, Ms. Hayashi.
Mr. Speaker and members, I must rise to oppose this legislation today. I chair Business and Professions Committee. This bill did come to our committee several times. I want to explain to you why. I have two reasons. First involves the sponsor of this legislation and the process. This bill is being sponsored by the California Board of Pharmacy, and their primary mission is consumer protection, not expanding scope of practice for a particular profession. They're supposed to be the watchdog. They're supposed to be the regulator of the industry. And it is my understanding that their mission, and this is from their website, I quote, is to protect and promote the health and safety of consumers. And they do this by licensing and regulating the profession. AB 977 is a scope of practice bill. Ms. Skinner, the author, mentioned that the bill was amended in the Business and Professions Committee. Unfortunately, when the bill went to the Appropriations Committee, the amendments were deleted. Following that action, I've sent a letter to the Board of Pharmacy asking for a report on their legislative activities and their process for sponsoring bills. That's reason number one. Number two, let's look at the policy. The sponsor and the author have not been able to provide any studies, newspaper articles, or single testimony that shows that expanding this pharmacy practice will promote and protect consumer health and safety. There isn't a single study shown or indicating that the patient coverage rate by pharmacists who already have been giving flu shots under current law. So they're already able to provide flu vaccination under the protocol of a physician. So why do we need this bill? The policy is flawed, and I believe that the sponsor sponsoring a legislation that basically expands the scope for pharmacists is inappropriate, and therefore I am regrettably opposing AB 977. And this is an attempt to increase scope of practice for one profession without an evidence-based link to consumer health and safety. I ask for your no vote.
Mr. Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to oppose this legislation as well. And I oppose it. I think the chair of the committee expressed some of the issues, but I oppose it on the process issue. This bill, we had an agreement in committee, and the Appropriations Committee made a policy change which I think was inappropriate, and I ask for your no vote on this.
Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You didn't know I was Irish, did you? A question of the author. I want to make sure that...
Without objection.
I want to make sure that we understand the intent of... I'm going to make some statements, and in there are implied questions that I want the author to affirm. The intent of the legislation is to allow pharmacies to administer influenza immunizations without supervision of a medical doctor in each case of the injection, but under a general protocol that will be developed with the cooperation of the Board of Pharmacy and the medical board, but with the medical board being the superior authority in defining those protocols. Now, first of all, do I have that correct?
Yes, but let me clarify one thing in that as the existing protocol does specify the issue of the consultation of the medical doctor, what it has created is an unlevel playing field for independent community pharmacies, so that chain pharmacies can hire one doctor. That doctor never has to ever appear at any pharmacy during any time immunizations are administered, but that one doctor is paid to sign off on. Now, most community-based independent pharmacies, maybe they're they don't have the economic wherewithal to do the same thing. So, in this narrow piece, what this would allow is the medical board to develop a protocol that could create a bit of a more level playing field for the independent pharmacy. It is up to the medical board whether what level of physician supervision they would include. The bill is silent on that. It leaves it to the medical board to determine that. But the intent is to try to make that level playing field for the independent pharmacies.
Now, I believe that in that answer you hit on the issue that was the amendment in committee that gave the authority to the medical board to define that, whereas prior to that amendment, it would be the protocol would be developed by the Board of Pharmacy and the medical board in a fashion that would allow pharmacies to administer this influenza injection without the direct supervision of a doctor in each and every case, but providing a protocol that it can be done generally.
Yes, and again, if I can clarify.
Before we go on, we're still on a question, but I want to make sure that you will be able to respond to the general statements later. I don't want to get into colloquy back and forth, but yes.
No, I'm phrasing that as a question. I'd like to hear the clarification.
Very good.
What I think I understand.
The bill that was approved in the Health Committee had the protocol for this narrow piece developed co-jointly by medical board and pharmacy board. It did not name one as a lead. When it came to BNP, the committee asked that we take an amendment that allow medical board to be lead. We agreed to that amendment, and that is in print, and it is in the bill right now.
Okay.
It is the bill that you have before you.
And that was the amendment that I recall I asked the question about. It was clarified, it was put in the bill, and it was at that point that we took the vote, and it was a 10-0 vote on that basis.
Correct.
Members, I'm supporting the bill. There seems to be some confusion with regard to at what point an amendment was agreed to and whether or not the amendment that's in the bill was exactly what the committee agreed to. But I have just confirmed in my conversation here before you with the author that it's perfectly consistent with what I thought was the case coming out of the committee, and that this is the form of the bill that I approved. And frankly, I approved of the form of the bill before that amendment, but nonetheless, I
will be voting yes on this bill as it stands. Thank you.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, I rise in support of the bill. I don't quite understand the basis to oppose it. Licensed vocational nurses require only a 2-year degree. Pharmacists require at least a 4-year degree and probably education beyond that. There are protocols in place, standards that they have to meet, and the more opportunities that are available for this influenza shot to be administered, especially in lower income areas, I think is the better. I mean, heck, you know, heroin users inject their they use an IV injection themselves, and you know, and it's usually not that kills them if they die. But the point is that I don't understand the reason for not supporting the bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Buchanan.
I have permission to ask the author a question.
Without objection.
Are there any organizations that are objecting to this bill on the basis of scope of practice?
There is currently no opposition to the bill.
I would just like to say that when we face potential epidemics like the H1N1 virus, it's to the benefit of all of us that we vaccinate as many people as possible. Because not only do we protect them, but we protect others from the spread of disease. So I would recommend an aye vote.
Seeing no further debate or discussion, Ms. Skinner, you may close.
Yes, thank you. I think you've heard the bill is very narrow in scope. It leaves the current protocols in place. It only allows for the development of a new protocol. The new protocol would be the lead by the California Medical Board, and the new protocol would govern the administration of influenza and influenza-only vaccines for people 18 and older. And it is none of the organizations that had opposed the bill originally are in opposition, and I requestfully ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Ms. Skinner moves a call.
Members, does anyone have a bill that was passed temporarily earlier today that they are prepared to take up at this time? Does any member have a bill that they are prepared to present? Members, if you have a bill on call and you are prepared to lift that call, please let the desk know. We will start lifting calls now on bills by request of the authors. So beginning with file item 51, AB 656 by Mr. Torrico. Clerk will open the roll. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote, ayes 41, noes 27. Measure passes. Mr. Furutani has requested that we lift the call on file item 24, AB 35. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 46, noes 13. The measure passes. Members, Ms. Strickland has requested that we take up AB 973 without reference to file. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 0. Measure passes. Mr. Solorio has requested that we lift the call on file item 45, AB 41. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 26. The measure passes. Mr. Amiano has requested that we lift the call on file item 53, AB 963. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 20. Ayes 45, noes 26. The measure passes. Mr. Amiano has requested we lift the call on file item 21, AB 1451. Clerk will post. File item 21, AB 1451. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 26. The measure passes. Mr. Liu has requested that we lift the call on file item 38, AB 1533. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 19. The measure passes.
We don't know if he's ready, Mr. Amiano.
Ms. Brownlee has requested that we lift the call on file item 46, AB 391, for Mr. Torlakson. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 25. The measure passes. Mr. Amiano has requested we lift the call on file item 31, AB 633. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 8. The measure passes. Assemblymember Block has requested we lift the call on file item 41, AB 1223. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 42, noes 24. The measure passes. Assemblymember Torres has requested we lift the call on file item 29, AB 424. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 45, noes 22. The measure passes.
Assemblymember Saldana has asked that we lift the call on item 28, AB 408. The clerk will post. Close the roll, tally the vote, ayes 41, noes 26. The measure passes. Assemblymember Skinner lifts the call on AB 977. The clerk will post. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 43, noes 10. The measure passes. Mr. Liu, are you ready to lift the call on item 6, AB 680? Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu lifts the call on item 6, AB 680. The clerk will post. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 50, noes 13. Measure passes. Ms. Ma lifts the call on file item 20, AB 987. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 28. Measure passes. Mr. Block lifts the call on file item 40, AB 1178. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Block moves the call. Without objection, we are moving to the second-day consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the second-day consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1263 by Assemblymember Strickland, an act relating to unlawful detainer.
The clerk will open the roll. Close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 781.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 25.
Ayes 66, none 0.
Assembly Bill 113.
Ayes 66, none, no 0.
Assembly Bill 223.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1097.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1204.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1224.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1229.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1431.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1433.
Ayes 66, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1502.
Ayes 66, no 0.
And Assembly Bill 1524.
Ayes 66, no 0. Where is Mr. Ng, are you ready to lift the call on item 36? Without objection, we'll lift the call on item 36, AB 1391. The clerk will post. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 48, noes 15. Measure passes. Mr. Dolatorre asked that we lift the call on item 42, AB 1225. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 44, noes 19. The measure passes. Mr. Block is ready to lift the call, on item 40, AB 1178. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll. Tally the vote. Noes 39, ayes 39, noes 28. The measure fails. Mr. Block.
Consideration.
The clerk will note. Members, this concludes the business on the daily file. All other Members, without objection, we will return to file item 35, AB 1375 by Ms. Galgiani. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1375 by Assemblymember Galgiani, an act relating to high-speed rail.
You may open, Ms. Galgiani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Competition is fierce for $8 billion in federal stimulus funding for high-speed rail, and California, along with the Midwest and Florida, are widely considered to be the front runners for these billions of dollars in federal funding. In California, more than 135 senior planners and managers who have participated in building, constructing, operating high-speed trains globally are involved in California's projects. And this represents hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure development throughout the world that's been successful and profitable. Now the High-Speed Rail Authority is conducting the environmental reviews and completing the design and engineering work throughout the state, which is necessary to meet the federal funding requirements and move to the construction stage of the project. California leads the nation in readiness to proceed, and with the money that we've asked for, if we get this money, it could provide upwards of 160,000 jobs within the next few years, many of those to start in the latter part of this year, 2010. Against this backdrop that I've just described, it's critically important that we look at the structure that we currently have for the High-Speed Rail Authority. This bill has two goals: to create a structure for the Department of High-Speed Trains within the business, transportation, and housing agencies to transfer 8 full-time and 1 half-time person that currently work for the High-Speed Rail Authority, so that they are working under the umbrella of BT&H. The bill does not call for any additional staff persons. Again, it's moving 8.5 persons. That's smaller than most of our own staffs. And they will now be under the employ of the Department of High-Speed Trains. This bill will also define the duties and responsibilities that exist between the High-Speed Rail Authority board members and the department. And it basically follows the governance structure that we currently have for Caltrans and the CTC. The department will carry out the day-to-day activities of constructing and implementing the project, while the board members will make decisions about policy making. This is the next step in our march to success, to take federal stimulus dollars and put them to work so that we can put California's economy back on a fast track to recovery. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 All members vote who desire to vote? All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 19. The measure passes. Without objection, we will return to file item 3, AB 978 by V. Manuel Perez, presented by Mr. Logue. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 978 by Assemblymember V. Manuel Perez, an act relating to State Chief Information Officer.
You may open, Mr. Logue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for allowing me to present this AB 978 this morning. This bill will serve to streamline a portion of the licensing process by requiring the State Chief Information Officer to work with the Department of Consumer Services to create a centralized one-stop licensing process. Currently, businesses in California have to navigate through many different agencies to register, obtain licenses, and report appropriate information in order to operate a business. The process is lengthy and is not conducive to a positive business climate. This bill allows for a business owner to complete an online application once and distribute it out to several of the licensing agencies. AB 978 is part of a bipartisan effort to help small business keep their doors open and creating new jobs. Ask for an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 1. The measure passes. Ms. Skinner is ready to lift the call on file item 37, AB 1504. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 25. Measure passes. This concludes the business on the daily file. All other items remaining will be passed and retained, and all motions shall be continued. The session schedule is as follows. Thursday, January 28th, floor session at 9:30 a.m., 9:30 a.m., members. Friday, January 29th, no floor session, no check-in. Monday, February 1st, floor session at 11 a.m. Please note that's an hour before our normal start time on Monday. Monday, February 1st, floor session at 11 a.m. Request to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Ma moves, Mr. Hagman seconds, that the House stand adjourned until Thursday, January 28th at 9:30 a.m. The quorum call is lifted.
fewer. Vote change. Item 58, AB 1254, aye to no.
Fewer, AB 1254, aye to no.
Emerson, file item 6, AB 680, no to not voting.
Emerson, AB 680, no to not voting.
Amiano, 984, aye to no.
Amiano, AB 984, aye to no.